little bit about is some of the body mechanics of Tai Chi. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's some of the reasons why Tai Chi is good for your balance is first the idea of strengthening the legs, right? The next idea is an awareness of where your center of gravity is, right? If everybody goes like this, touches their thumbs and crosses their fingers, lays their thumb on their navel, where their fingers are crossing, that's called the Dan Tian. That's where your center of gravity is, right? So what they say is they say that it's 3 inches down from the navel and 2 inches inside. So that's where it is. And I just find this is a good way to find it, So basically what happens is it rides pretty much right inside the pelvic girdle. And finally, there's also an awareness of posture, right? And awareness of posture is basically if I go too far forward, I'm now off balance and can fall over easily. So the idea of stopping when our knee is above our ankle and relaxing our hips is the way we get a good solid stance. And the hope is that when you guys learn this in Tai Chi, that you don't segregate it out of your lives and think you're only doing it in Tai Chi, because the real benefit of Tai Chi is carrying it into your regular life. One of the things about martial arts training, and I can relate to this in terms of falls. I mean, I learned to roll and fall when I was a teenager, right, doing martial arts. And it has been of more use to me in my regular life when I tripped and fell over something, or one time I fell off a ladder, and I actually used that skill to just kind of roll down the ladder, so I wasn't really hurt. Another time I was on my bicycle and was hit by a car, and I was able to use my skill to roll to reduce the injuries. In fact, I kind of rolled across the guy's hood, because what happened was I was going like this. He was at a stop sign, and I was going through the intersection. He pulled right in front of me, so he didn't actually hit me, I hit him. But I went over my handlebars, and what I did was I rolled across his hood, right, and then landed on the other side of his hood going, ta-da! So that was basic. So that's kind of the thing is that most of the time, the hope is that in martial arts training, you never have to use it for self-defense, but instead you get to use it to improve your overall life, right? So that's the hope. Everybody's fingers are crossed. So and then the other thing is, by doing Pung, we gently encourage this gentle movement, encourage core strength. So this very gentle embrace, and I've said this before, the embrace is only with about 4 ounces of pressure. So one of the things that people often do with Pung, they don't understand, is they make it rigid like a basketball, when it's actually, or even a soccer ball, let's say. But what it's actually more like, those fitness balls that you sit on and you do your exercises on this fitness ball, and it helps engage your core. So that's kind of what would you say, tension that you want. So it's 4 ounces of tension. One of the things they say is 4 ounces of pressure deflects 10,000 pounds. I always like to qualify that and say 4 ounces of pressure and impeccable timing deflects 10,000 pounds. So when we're here and we're doing that, so that's the idea. So first, if we just do Pung again, and to do Pung, and this happens all the time through the entire form. As I pull my hips forward from the abdomen and relax my knees, I want to feel a very gentle stretch in my lower back, in the lumbar area. They refer to that as opening the Ming Men. And then, of course, I just slightly drop my chin, maybe a quarter inch, just not this much. And then I do a big, gentle embrace, 4 ounces of pressure, right? So that's the idea. Now, all of the Tai Chi postures, and I've said this before, can be found in Pung. If you do Pung, it doesn't matter what Tai Chi posture you're doing, you can find Pung in that posture. Okay, so when we're doing, that's the idea. So when we're doing it, what that does, that gently engages the core, right? And so you're very, very gently strengthening your core. You're not like doing You're not like doing crunches or sit-ups or, we're not trying to look for the six-pack, right? I gave up on having a six-pack a long time ago. Okay, so the idea is that I'm just very gently engaging the core. Now, the other thing that happens with the leg strength, and when we talk about moving in Tai Chi, now the force in Tai Chi, basically what the Tai Chi, there's a poem that says that the force comes out of the ground, comes up through the legs, and is expressed in the hand or in the technique, right? So when we're doing that, we're going to talk about that. There's three ways that the force is generated in Tai Chi. So we're going to do that here. So let's go ahead and turn this way. And first, just go ahead and just put your hands on your abdomen here, finding the Dantian. So what happens is the first way here, let me turn around this way so you can see. As I turn around here, as I step out, the force first begins in the ground, comes up out of the back foot, out of the foot that I'm pushing out of. Now the next place where the force is applied is by pulling my hip backward. And then finally I sink into the ground, right? So as I'm doing the force in Tai Chi, I'm coming up here, I'm beginning to push into the ground with my foot, pulling with the lead hip, and then sinking into the front foot, right? So let's try that. We're gonna do brush knee twist, right? So here we go, like here, we're doing brush knee twist. Now, you place the foot, begin to push out of the ground with the ball of the foot, pulling with the front hip, and then sinking into the front foot. Now what they say in Tai Chi, right, is they say, again, force comes out of the ground, right? And with the other thing they say is that you should turn the waist as if a string of pearls. So if we all stand like this for a second, there's two things that happen simultaneously when you're moving in Tai Chi. One is as you shift your weight, and that's where you're kind of creating the force. And so if we start with my right, your left, as we go from right to left, we're going to push into the ground with the right foot and then sink into the ground with the ball of the left foot in K1, that hollow spot just behind the foot. Now we push out of that and sink. And you want to relax, and you relax into that so you feel a solid connection between your Dantian, the lower abdomen here, and the center of the earth. So here, as I move, so when you first hear the word move from your center, you understand that that's move from the Dantian, from the Gua, and then what happens is as you go farther along, you come to realize that center also means the center of the foot. It also means the center of the earth. So as I move from the center, I'm doing all of those things simultaneously. So when I sink into a foot, I want to feel a connection between my center, the Dantian, and the center of the earth. When I feel that solid connection, then I know I'm rooted, right? I'm a big fan of that. I root for it all the time. So here, back, shift, and then sink. Shift, and then sink. So now then simultaneous to that, what will happen is we will pull our hip back toward whichever way we're turning, right? So as we're going from your left and I'm going from my right, we're going to shift, and you're going to pull your right hip backward. As you shift from your right to your left, you shift and pull your left hip backward. So what happens is I'm turning my hips by pulling them. So if we stand here without shifting the weight, we're going to just put your hands on your hips now. Pull your right hip backward and pull your left hip backward. Pull your right hip backward, pull your left hip backward. Now as we do that again, we can add the shift again. As we shift, we pull backward. As we shift, we pull backward. As we shift, we pull backward. As we shift, we pull backward, right? Now, if we apply that to the brush knee twist, as I'm here, I'm doing brush knee twist. Let's turn around this way so the camera can see what I'm doing. Okay, so as we shift here, I drop here. Now I'm beginning to shift my weight, but I'm simultaneously pulling with my lead hip, pulling my left hip backward. So starting with the right foot, place the foot out empty, shift, and sink. Now, as I sink into this foot, part of the process of sinking is relaxing the hips. They refer to that as opening the guave. Okay, so as I'm here, I'm going to relax the hips. One of the things that is often described is as if riding a horse. You take a comparison, what be riding a horse. Now, full disclosure, I've never in my life ridden a horse. I've ridden a surfboard. I'm a California kid. Okay, I've ridden a surfboard, but I've never ridden a horse. But the idea is when you ride a horse, and I'm saying this by rote, full disclosure, is that in order to ride, anybody here ride a horse? Okay, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you ride a horse, you have to relax your hips, and that you're not really riding so much on the back of the horse, but kind of in the stirrups on the balls of your feet with just lightly touching the saddle. Is that the case? Tai Chi is exactly the same way. Okay, so I'm glad that my assumptions were verified. Okay, so here, when I come here, it's the same thing. You see, as I turn, I'm going to relax into my hip. Now we can come back and turn. I'm just going to switch my feet here. And again, the same thing. I've got my right foot forward. As I shift, I push into the ground with the left foot, pull with the right hip, and then sink into the ground. Now, all of the Tai Chi movements are the same. Every single Tai Chi movement is the same. What you want to feel when you're doing Tai Chi is you want to feel an active workout of your lower body. If you're looking, how many of you guys are here because you don't want to lose your balance? How many of you are here are basically to improve your balance and reduce your risk of falls, right? So I didn't just fall into that idea. That came into, that's been done by some research by the National Institute of Aging and also the Center for Disease Control, that this is one of the things that Tai Chi is good for. So now we can talk about doing this in Repulse Monkey, right? So here we are. Now my weight is in my right leg. I've got about 80% of my weight in my right leg, 20% in the left. As I sink into the right leg, I pull the left foot in, place it back, and now I'm going to do the same thing. I turn in the heel, and then I begin to shift, pushing out of my right foot and pulling with my left hip. So let's try that again. So here I go. Feet are together. Place the foot, pull, and shift. Can you feel that? Can you feel how that's actually active? So one of the things that we don't want to do is why we're doing the form is it's not a hippie acid dance, okay? That it's actually, we're actually active. You're actually training the body. It's actually Gung Fu. Gung Fu actually translates into English is anything learned over time requiring discipline. Okay, so when we do that here, as I shift, I push. And then the same thing, now I'm back here. Now we're gonna step back with the right foot, turn in the heel. As I shift my weight, I'm pushing out of the left foot, sinking into the right foot. Can you feel that? Now another way that you can feel this is with wave hands like clouds. Okay, so you guys remember wave hands like clouds? So now as we're doing this, remember we maintain, I used to work out with William Koo on Saturday mornings behind a restaurant that was on Harvard Street called the Bodhi Tree Cafe. And the whole 2 hours that we got together and worked, he would stand here and just do wave hands. He wouldn't step. He would just simply shift and turn, shift, and turn. And one of the things about wave hands is you can really feel these principles at work. So he would stand there for the whole 2 hours, occasionally correct my form, and occasionally stop and go, Doug, you need to meditate more. So that was the idea. So now as we're doing that, remember what we just did here, that shift and turn? So here we're going to shift and turn, shift and turn. So as I turn, I'm turning by pulling that hip that I'm turning toward backward. So I'm pulling the hip that I'm turning, I'm pulling with that hip. So basically the idea is that I'm not pushing to turn. The push is the shift of the weight. The pull is to turn the hips or to turn the waist. So now if we go back to here, so we go pung on the side. So here's where we establish pung. And again, pung is helping to gently strengthen the core, because what happens is Western exercise physiology says in order to stretch one set of muscles, you must flex the opposing set of muscles. And in Tai Chi, we describe that as a gentle embrace, right? So as I'm here, I gently embrace. Now, as I shift and turn, I maintain that gentle embrace. Now, all I'm going to do is just simply switch hands. One of the things that you often see, a mistake that people make, is they start doing this with doing wave hands like clouds. But you notice that actually, my hands stay more or less in front of my torso. They stay pretty much in center line. So center line in martial arts is often referred to as that line which begins in the ground between your feet, goes straight up to the top of your head. It's referred to center line. And one of the goals of martial arts is to always defend that center line, right? So as I'm turning and shifting, I'm going to keep my hands in front of that center line to protect the center line. So this sideways motion, this lateral motion, is occurring because of the shift in the turn of my body, not because I'm moving my arms. Pretty much Tai Chi, your movement is happening in the lower body, and the upper body is maintaining pung and flowing along. And again, pung is gentle, so it's like if you were to squeeze a fitness ball, you get a little bit of compression before you stop being able to feel, as opposed to a basketball, which you squeeze and there's no give there. So there's a little bit of give, right? So if you were to push on my arm, before my arm here stops, I'm gonna borrow Carolyn for a second. Here. Ha-ha.
Where's Julie when you need her?
Yeah, so grab my wrist here, both hands. Now very slowly push my arm in. Now you notice as you do that, there's that moment where when you first start, you'll notice there's a little bit of
Movement, yeah.
So there's a little bit of compression there, and then what happens is she then hits the fullness of pung and it stops compressing. And that at that point is when I begin to roll my hip out of the way. Thank you. You were scared, I can tell. Everybody give Julie. Yay! Okay, so now that's the idea. So when we're doing it, that's the idea. This is this gentle embrace. Now we move, but we maintain that gentle embrace the whole time. One of my favorite metaphors for this is they say, as if hugging your favorite grandchild. Now most of us, if we hug our favorite grandchild, it's blue. You know, so here, that's the idea. Now, all of the Tai Chi movements, I don't care what you're doing. We just did brush knee twist, that same thing. You know, the body stays still. I maintain pung while the lower body moves through, so that the force is coming out of the ground. It's coming out of the ground from shifting from one leg to the other and being directed because I'm pulling my hip backward, right? And then it's all carrying to the upper body and being delivered because I'm maintaining pung. Right? So that's the idea. Okay, thank you.